Welcome to our deep dive into insider threats and how to protect companies against them. You hear about data breaches every day, companies hacked, identities stolen. It's scary stuff. But here's the thing. Often the biggest threat to your data, to your company's security, isn't some shadowy figure in a hoodie, hunched over lines of code in a basement. It's not some foreign government. It's much closer to home than that. It's the threat from within. Today, we'll explore what insider threats are, the different types, and effective strategies to safeguard your organization. Because here's the reality. It's not a question of if these threats exist, it's a question of whether you're prepared to face them when they inevitably rear their heads. And believe me, the cost of being unprepared, it's way, way higher than the cost of being prepared. An insider threat. It sounds like something out of a spy thriller, right? But this is the real world, and the stakes are high. We're talking about anyone with legitimate access to your company's sensitive information, to its systems, to its networks. Employees, contractors, vendors, business partners, anyone who can exploit that access, either intentionally or unintentionally, to cause harm. Think about it: stolen data, financial fraud, sabotage, even violence. And here's the thing, it's not always a malicious act. Sometimes it's negligence, a careless mistake, a weak password, an email opened without thinking, but the consequences, just as devastating. So how do we protect ourselves from something that can take so many forms? Well, first, we need to understand exactly who or what we're dealing with. Let's break down the different types of insider threats, because knowing your enemy is half the battle. First, you've got your classic malicious insiders. These are the folks with a bone to pick. Disgruntled employees, maybe, seeking revenge or financial gain. Then there are the negligent workers, well-meaning perhaps, but careless. They fall for phishing scams, leave their laptops unlocked, you know the type. But it doesn't end there. Departing employees can pose a significant risk, especially if they feel mistreated or are going to a competitor. And let's not forget about inside agents, individuals recruited or coerced by external entities. Then you've got third-party partners, contractors, vendors, anyone with access to your systems who might not have the same security protocols in place. It's a lot to keep track of, right? But don't worry, we're going to unpack each of these, one by one. Okay, so we know the players. Now, how do we protect ourselves? Access control is a good place to start. We need to operate on a need-to-know basis. This is not about being secretive, it's about being smart. We implement the principle of least privilege, which means giving employees access only to the information and systems they absolutely need to do their jobs. No more, no less. And let's talk about role-based access controls. This isn't about playing favorites. It's about making sure that people have the appropriate level of access based on their role within the company. And crucially, we need to regularly review these permissions. People change roles, they leave the company, and access needs to be adjusted accordingly. It might seem like a pain, but trust me, it's a whole lot less painful than a data breach. Chapter 4. Knowledge is power training your first line of defense. Look, technology is important, but it's not a silver bullet. We need to train our employees, our most valuable asset, to be our first line of defense. Regular cybersecurity training sessions are non-negotiable. We're not just talking about checking a box here, we're talking about engaging, interactive training that really drives the message home. We need to cover the basics, password hygiene. It's not just about using a string of random characters, it's about understanding why strong passwords matter. And phishing scams. They're getting more sophisticated by the day, so we need to equip our employees to spot them. And of course, the secure handling of sensitive data. This isn't just about protecting the company, it's about protecting our customers, our partners, and ourselves. Chapter 5. Playing detective monitoring user activity. Okay, remember those spy thrillers we were talking about? Well, it's time to put on our detective hats because we need to monitor user activity. Don't worry, we're not talking about Big Brother here. We're talking about protecting ourselves from legitimate threats. We're talking about tools like user and entity behavior analytics. This isn't about spying on our employees. It's about establishing a baseline of normal behavior so we can spot anomalies in real time. Think of it like a smoke detector. It doesn't go off every time someone burns toast, but it will alert you to a potential fire. Same principle here. Sudden spikes in data access, unusual login times, downloads of large amounts of data. These are all red flags that something might be amiss. And by catching them early, we can prevent a small problem from turning into a full-blown crisis. Chapter 6. Double bolting the doors, strengthening identity security. We've all heard the saying, trust, but verify. Well, when it comes to identity security, verification is key. We need to implement multi-factor authentication, and I mean across the board. Every system, every application, every device. This isn't just about passwords anymore. It's about adding extra layers of security to make sure that the person accessing our systems is actually who they say they are. Think of it like this. You wouldn't leave your house unlocked, right? You'd lock the front door, maybe even add a deadbolt. Multi-factor authentication is like adding an alarm system and security cameras on top of that. It's about making it as difficult as possible for unauthorized users to gain access. And while we're at it, we need to be continuously monitoring authentication traffic for any suspicious activity. Remember, vigilance is key. Chapter 7. No loose ends. Securing, onboarding, and offboarding. Okay, let's talk about two crucial processes that are often overlooked: onboarding and offboarding. When we bring new employees on board, we need to be thorough. Background checks, folks. They're not just a formality, they're an essential part of the hiring process. We need to know who we're granting access to our systems. And it's not just about criminal history, it's about verifying employment history, education, and professional references. And just as importantly, we need to have a clear and consistent offboarding process. When an employee leaves the company, we need to revoke their access to all systems and data immediately, no exceptions. This includes physical access cards, key fobs, everything. This might seem obvious, but you'd be surprised how often it's overlooked. And a disgruntled former employee with access to sensitive information? That's a recipe for disaster. Chapter 8. Teamwork makes the dream work. Developing an insider threat mitigation program. We've covered a lot of ground, but here's the bottom line. Protecting our organizations from insider threats requires a comprehensive approach. It's not just about technology, it's about people, processes, and culture. We need to create a culture of security awareness, where everyone understands the risks and takes responsibility for protecting our assets. And to do that effectively, we need a dedicated team, not just IT, but a cross-functional team involving HR, legal, security experts, the whole shebang. This team will be responsible for identifying vulnerabilities, developing and implementing policies and procedures, conducting risk assessments, and responding to incidents. Because remember, it's not a question of if an insider threat will occur, it's a question of when. And when it does, we need to be ready. Outro: stay safe, stay secure. We've covered a lot of ground today, but I hope you come away from this with a better understanding of the very real threat posed by insiders. Remember, these aren't just statistics. These are people we work with, people we trust. And that's why it's so important to be vigilant, to be proactive, and to be prepared. By combining technological solutions with robust policies, training programs, and proactive risk management strategies, companies can significantly reduce their vulnerability to insider attacks. But it takes a concerted effort from everyone. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and secure.